We are here to interview you, to ask you some, very quick questions about what's behind the scene of your short film. Would you like to talk about your short film a little bit? So what it talks about, when it's shot, and then we go to some questions.
Of course. Hi, Isabella. So my film is the name of my film is Studio Beyrouth, and it's a 15 minutes short film. It's my graduation film. I did it last year, and it's a film about a photographer in 1963 and his adventure with a photo booth. So mainly I wanted to do a film about Beirut because it's my city and I love it, and I'm a photographer, so I wanted to I had a research about photographers in Lebanon in the 1960s and 50s, and I found that there are so many that we don't know, and I created this film, Studio Beirut.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we want to know a little bit more about, the context in which you created your film. So you said it's about the 1960s in Beirut. What were the 1960s like in Beirut?
Well, actually, the 1960s until 1975, it was the golden era of Beirut in the Middle East. It used to be called the Geneva of the Middle East because it was a fashionable city. Everyone used to be very happy. We had a really nice atmosphere. I didn't live, but from my parents and from some movies that were left before the war, and it was really a metropolitan city where everyone used to go to have for tourism, for nightlife, for shopping. So it was really the center of the Middle East, and people were more like, it's Mediterranean, so it's like here in Santiago, everyone is happy, everyone is warm, and Beirut is like this, and it's still like this, but after the war, everything changed, and unfortunately, and because it was really there was 15 years of war, so it was a lot of time, and so my movie tackles the 60s because it's an era that it was beautiful, and I never lived in it. I only heard about it from my parents, from my grandparents, and from the stories that we know about in schools and in movies, in the old movies in Lebanon. So I was very intrigued to do my movie in this particular era.
Okay, so what if I ask you something about, so you've kind of quite experienced war in Lebanon.
Yeah.
So I will venture into some kind of a personal question.
Yeah.
So how has that shaped your artistic conception, your artistic creativity?
Yeah. Well, actually, after 15 years of war, which I didn't live, actually, I was born at the end of the war. But in 2006, there was a war in Lebanon. It was very short between Lebanon and Israel. It was very short. It was 1 month and a half. But yeah, it was very traumatic. So you can imagine the civil war. It was more dramatic on our parents and the older generation. So actually, beginning of 90s and until now, people are still traumatized from the war because it was really something very long. It was 15 years. So if you research about movies, poetry, or books that were written in this after the war, you see that many people are really traumatized by the war. And so personally, I feel like I inherited the traumatizing, which I didn't have control on. I'm young, and I like to live and I like life, but I saw my parents that were still they were sad about the war and about what they lost and about the conflict of religions and conflict of differences. So we still live it in Beirut, but our generation, my generation, are fighting this. They don't want this anymore. They want to live. They want to do projects. They want to be motivated to continue to do their own life and to prosper. So that's the thing. I guess I was when I was doing my movie, I was like I wanted to do something away from the war because I mean those past years there were so many movies that were released in Lebanon about war, and I felt like, I mean, you go on the news, you open the news, and you hear about sad news about other countries and about your country. So I was like, I wanted to do something before the war. What was before that? How people were acting, how people were living. Of course, in my own vision, I created something that is fiction. So I really wanted to manipulate it because I wanted to put my style. But in that style, in that fiction, there's a sense of reality, of course. There about the characters, about the story. So that's why I want to get away from the war. I mean, it is traumatizing, but we have to move forward.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for sharing this, very personal insight. Thank you. And talking about the let's say the operation of getting back your memories. So building up memories, new memories out of old memories, maybe. The protagonist, we won't disclose anything, kind of anything, no spoilers. So you decided to focus on a photographer.
Yep.
So why this? Of course, you're a photographer, but why this choice of creating a short film about this misadventure with a photo booth?
Yes. Actually, my starting point was I was doing my research in a foundation. It's called Arab Image Foundation, and I noticed there was no actual archive of photographers in the 60s and 50s. There was, but it was very few. And I noticed, and I researched, and I asked why there was no archive. And unfortunately they were burned during the war. So the personal archive, only like personal like parents and stuff like that, families, they were conserved. But during the war everything was torn apart, the shops, the photography shops. So I was like, you know what, I wanted to do something about a photographer in the Beirut. I wanted to create a character. And actually 3-4 years ago I went to France and I tried the photo booth, and I was like, for me as a photographer, I'm always intrigued by technology and how it changed the world. So I asked around as well. There was there any photo booth in the city of Beirut in the 60s and 50s? And I asked my parents, and they told me that they used to watch movies, and before watching movies, in the cinema, there was a photo booth, and they enter it, and they used to like take picture in it, but unfortunately because of the war, it didn't develop. It's not like in France or in Europe where you have photo booth in every shopping mall and everything. It's not very developed. So I was very intrigued by the fact of the photo booth and how it's created, and what did the photographers feel when there was a photo booth, because it kind of replaces the photographer in some parts, and it is now. For example, in I don't know, in France, because I live in France now, you don't go to a photographer, you go into photo booth to do a photo passport. In Lebanon, for example, we still go to the photographer to do photo passport. We don't use photo booth. So actually, I think the machine conquered Europe more than Lebanon in the photo booth, more than, because photographers are now like more artists in Europe. In Lebanon, it's more like commercial. They live with it, so it's more like living. It's like it's really, you live out of it. It's not like just you're an artist, and so that was like really a starting idea or starting research why I wanted to do this film. And it's being nostalgic, it's being a photographer, it's like the machine and the photographer. I mean, we live in a world where everything is being very easy delivered to us. And the photo booth is part of it. It's part of the technology that was conquering the world. And it conquered the world very slowly, as you noticed. And so, yeah, that's it briefly.
Okay, thank you. That's so interesting. So I would ask you another question about, the themes of your, not just this short film, not just Studio Beirut, but also of your production.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you see, what are the themes that you are more interested in developing and studying through your visual creativity?
Yeah. Well, actually, I love talking about memory. I love the collective memory in Lebanon, because there were so many like little stories about in Lebanon that were when we were children we would talk about it, and our grandparents talk about it. So, and they don't exist anymore. For example, like there was a fun, like in the villages. I don't know in Europe or in Italy if it's the same. Maybe it's a Mediterranean thing. In the villages, there was like a guy who has like has a machine on his shoulder, and he goes around into the villages and he shows kids about pictures, and he tells them stories. So this kind of thing doesn't exist anymore. So I want to tackle this kind of subject, for example, because it was very. It's a subject that it's a phenomenal that existed in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, but nowadays it doesn't exist anymore. You know, because we watch movies or we go to the cinema. I mean, this kind of person, this kind of artist, or that they existed and they are not anymore. They don't exist anymore. So these kind of subjects that I like to tackle, and they are in our memory. They are in our collective memory in Lebanon or in the Middle East.
Okay, so thank you. It was memory as a, it's a very good topic, and it's also interesting in its development, or potential development and potential growth of it, because now you live in Paris, so you're adding further experiences. First Dubai, then Cairo, then Lebanon, then Beirut. It was, it all and also Sant'Antioco. Maybe it will add some more layers of experience, I think. Yes. And then one last thing. So, what are your projects for the future?
All right. Well, now I'm working as a photographer, and I'm trying to have a marriage of video and film and photography in a way that express what I want. All these experiences, like you said, all the destinations I went to and the experiences I lived, they shape up what I am, and I'm still looking for what I want to do, and for who I am, because I think. Wherever I'm gonna go into this world, in any country, I'm gonna always hold the Lebanese and the Beiruti memories into me, and to talk about them, to talk about the stories that I lived, that my country, passes through. So I think I want to work now on photography more, but I'm not gonna forget the film and filmmaking, because I love it, and it runs in my blood. I think maybe my grandfather was a photographer or something.